Good evening. Welcome to the Somerville Redevelopment Authority's meeting of April 19th. It's approximately 5:31 p.m. My name is Phil Ercolini. I'm the chair of the Somerville Redevelopment Authority, and I call this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this public meeting of the SRA is being conducted via remote participation. This session will be recorded and will be a public record. I'll now ask board members to confirm that they are in attendance, and I'll do so in alphabetical order. Awana Bonnie,
You're present.
Ben Ewan Campen,
Here.
William Gage,
Here.
Patrick McCormick,
Here.
Christine Stone,
Here.
and myself, Phil Ercolini. Just for the record, all board members are in attendance and we have a quorum. I'll now ask city staff to present a few of the house rules about using the technology.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So hi everyone, my name is Ben Demers. I'm an economic development planner for the city and I serve as staff to the Somerville Redevelopment Authority. When an agenda item is being presented, any presentation materials that staff have received ahead of time will be displayed on the screen. City staff and other participants who wish to direct the board's attention to a specific page should verbally note what page staff should show on the screen and should then verbally explain to the board what is being shown. When the chair asks for public comment on the matters discussed tonight, please use the raise hand function and go to webinar if you would like to speak. Note that it might take a few seconds for me to unmute each speaker. I will unmute you one by one and you will receive 2 minutes to speak. When it is your turn, please clearly state your name and address before saying anything else. After 2 minutes, your microphone will be muted. And I'll pass it over to Kathy.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Lester-Selkert, and I'm acting special counsel to the SRA. I want to remind all board members that all votes must be roll call votes with a motion and a second. The chair will call on each board member for a yes, no vote in alphabetical order. Remember that any questions or comments that you type into the questions or chat boxes in the control panel area of your screen will be part of the public record. In accordance with the open meeting law, questions or comments should only be directed to the organizer, who will then bring them to the chair's attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. So we'll move now to the agenda, and the first item on the agenda is the approval of the March 15th meeting minutes. Have all members had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes.
Any
Yes.
comments, any change, any amendments to that? Okay, seeing none, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Anyone? Okay, Mr. Gage approves the offers a motion to approve. Is there a second?
All seconded.
Okay, Awana Bonnie seconds. All those in favor, roll call vote. Awana Bonnie,
Yes.
Ben Ewan Campen,
Yes.
William Gage,
Yes.
Patrick McCormick.
Just point of order, I guess I can say yes, though I was not present at that meeting, or do I just say
That's a
present?
good question. Catherine, what do you think?
Sorry, I was.
Okay.
I think you can vote to approve. You don't have to have been there.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yes.
Okay, Patrick McCormick says yes, and Christine Stone?
I was going to ask the same question because I was not there as well, but I will, yes, approve the minutes.
Thank you very much. And myself, Phil Ercolini, have approved the minutes. Next item on the agenda is a public comment period. Is there any members of the public at this time, Ben, that would like to address the board?
Not currently, but if we want to just give it a few seconds.
Sure.
Okay, there are no hands raised.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item number 3, which is 90 Washington Street, and a request for a qualifications and civic advisory committee update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll handle this.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben, for the slides. I'm just going to recap our request for qualifications process, which the first phase of which culminated on April 7th when we received our responses. Next slide. briefly to recap our process, we sent invitations to over 70 developers, both for and nonprofit, in February, as well as putting out a general notification of our intake request in various media. We held a virtual site tour, which I showed last time, and had a roundtable discussion for questions on February 28th, where we had 24 attendees. And on April 7th, we got 3 proposals, or responses, I should say, not proposals, which provided answers to our questions that we posed in the request for qualifications instrument. They were from Greystar LLC, a large national developer of commercial and mixed-use projects, as well as large-scale residential apartment projects. Penrose LLC, another large regional developer of mixed-use projects, both residential and commercial. And then finally, we got a response from the Onyx Group, which is a small local developer that is partnering with a local architect that specializes in building mixed-use developments, as well as a number of public facilities, including fire stations. So our next steps, right now we are examining the responses for completeness and to assess the answers that they posed to our questions that we set out in our RFQ instrument. We have the Civic Advisory Committee for 90 Washington Street reviewing the responses as well, and at our next meeting, we will discuss their reactions to these 3 responses. In particular, besides meeting the minimum criteria for submitting proposals in the next process, we're looking at the answers to the questions we posed to them, which focus on transit-oriented development, the relocation of New Washington Street on the site to accommodate a public safety building, sustainable construction methods, and the ways of managing construction costs and sustainability, how a public safety building can be integrated into the site in a public-private partnership, and the options that stem from that relationship, specifically whether parts of the public safety building can be, instead of integrated in one building, can be accommodated at in different buildings on different parts of the site, whether the public safety building can be built within a larger building, or should it be a standalone building on a standalone parcel, those type of issues. And then finally, the last 2 areas are ground floor uses, especially ground floor retail and commercial uses, and affordable housing. And as I said, the Civic Advisory Committee will share their reactions and feedback on these proposals at their next meeting on May 10th. And we will provide that input to the Redevelopment Authority in future meetings, especially as we craft a request for proposals for this process. So that's where we are in a nutshell. And I know that, going from inviting 70 plus firms to getting 3 responses is a little bit less than you may be expecting, less than what we expected. Working with our consultants, they say this is not an unusual response rate. They have assisted with request for proposal and request for qualifications processes that have garnered no results. So they recommend to work with the 3 proposals we have, to really review them, examine them, and then invite those 3 respondents to, if they're able to provide a proposal for redeveloping the site for our consideration. In particular, with inviting them to bring on additional partners to their development teams to respond to or strengthen any areas where we think they might be lacking in their responses. So that is their recommended course of action. And so that is what we're considering right now as we look at their responses and look at their qualifications. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now, Mr. Chair.
Ted, yeah, let me start off here, because I'm a little bit disappointed in the 3, that this is only 3. Secondly, is it, just for clarification, so the only developer who's had any experience with public safety buildings or fire stations per se is the 3rd one, which is a small developer, local developer, and they would partner with someone else. The other 2 larger developers have no experience with public safety buildings?
I shouldn't say they have no experience. They certainly didn't highlight their past public safety or public facility projects in their submittals.
You would think that they would, though, would you not?
That's what I was expecting. Which is not to say they can't work with other groups to inject that type of experience into their development team. And that's something we'll work with and examine, asking them to do going forward with our real estate consultants.
I'm just gonna ask Christine, because she has quite a bit of experience in the development world. Could this be a factor of the economy, that developers are shy at this point about engaging or getting involved in what I would think might be a complicated development project?
Yes,
Okay.
it's also, yes, I mean, it's not a good time to be acquiring sites because there's uncertainty in the market, and the price that you can pay for land may not be the price that the seller is willing to take, given the last, call it 18 to 24 months of comparable sales that might have occurred in the market. Part of it is to do with its escalation of construction costs. And then depending on what the other uses of the site for, if it's commercial, and if it's a commercial development coupled with a public safety building, you have dwindling demand for office and lab. So prices are going up, demand's going down. If it's affordable housing, I can't really speak to that. I'm not in the affordable housing world, but I would imagine for the right site, there would be a developer at any point in the cycle. That said, affordable housing developers I know are also struggling with costs.
Right.
And they are restricted as to their rents, right? Incomes are not as, they're restricted to their percentage of AMI, right? They can charge for certain rents based on the AMI that they're targeting their apartments for. And I suspect that AMI is not going up at the same rate that construction costs are going up. But I think, I think it could also be, I think something you alluded to, Phil, which is the complexity here, right? This is not just an affordable housing site. This is not just a public safety building. It's a mixed use.
Right.
And it's a mixed use with my sense is that for the public safety building, that's public procurement. It's a public procurement funding. And there are only so many contractors and developers who can do that work. I think they have to be licensed, and they have to, like at my company, we do not do that work because we have chosen not to go down that path. So I think to couple that type of construction and development with commercial development adds layers of complexity to this process.
So that being said, Ted, is there we're not under any time constraints as it relates to court,
We can,
issues like that. So,
we can release a request for proposals, which is the follow-on element of this process, whenever we want. We're
Okay.
not tied to a specific date.
okay. All right. Is it any other members? Ask Bill?
Yes, Ted, can any of the other developers, when you put out your request for proposals, anybody else can bid on this, correct?
That we're considering opening it up again. Initially, our process was we were going to have only respondents to this request for qualifications be eligible to for the request for proposals process that would follow up. We're considering opening that up now, or the alternative is to work with these 3 respondents to get 3 good proposals to consider. Because as our consultants have said, in the end, if you have 3 good proposals to consider, it doesn't matter whether it doesn't matter whether you got just 3 and developed them at the start, or you had 20 at the start and you whittled them down to 3. Does that make sense? It's just the proposal pool. And just parenthetically, I did talk to a number of developers in the Washington Street area with projects that are going on, and a number of them said they declined to respond because they wanted to focus on their current development operations. Even though it was an attractive site, they were focused on their current operations and developing the current projects that they were pursuing in the city.
I think 5 or 10 years ago, that might have been a different.
It might have been, sure.
Okay. Anyone else like to, Christine?
Yeah, I just have a question about timing. I don't know who can answer this, if this is Catherine or Ted or Ben, but if this site is to house the public safety building, and I know there are some community dissension about spending money on a new public safety building, period. But if this if this site is to house or be an option for a new public safety building, don't we have to run an RFP process in a fashion that hits the parameters associated with getting the current public safety building out of its current location, given the obligations for on the Union Square zoning, right? Doesn't that public safety building have to be out of its current location by a certain point? And that's
I'm sorry. That's my understanding. I know that we are paying that to keep the current public safety building in its current location. We are paying US2 lease payments to keep it there. I don't know the exact parameters of when the current public safety building has to vacate, but it's at some point in the future. I don't know, Kathy, if you have any information on that.
I don't. That was just I was just made aware of that today. So I don't really know, but that's a very good question, Christine, and it probably is specified in the lease agreement somewhere. We can check that out and find out for you. Because that might give us a deadline, or it might, suggest the time frame that we're working with.
correct.
Right.
Ben Ewan-Campen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, for folks who are watching this, there's a lot of different moving parts in this. I think it'd be helpful for us to clarify that the RFQ is not people who are going to build the public safety building, right? This is for developers seeking to develop the rest of the site. I know everyone here understands that, but I just, for members who are following this, members of the public, I think we should.
I will condition that, though. We're asking if it's possible that one developer could build everything, but whoever develops the public safety building has to comply with state regulations. So we're asking if that's even possible, because that's what came out of the public feedback we spent the past year garnering through our various meetings and whatnot. So that we're trying to get a firm answer from the development community on that. But
okay, and just maybe you can help me then from a staff perspective. Is that something we consider likely?
Probably not.
Okay. Thank you.
But
Christine?
yeah, I would just say then that this raises another question as to what comes first, right? So if we are to move forward on a commercial development, that commercial development wants to know how much of the site is theirs versus how much of the site might be for a public safety building and vice versa, right? So how public, because I know there were different ideas about a public safety building in terms of the massing. So I feel like if this is a site that will house the public safety building, there are certain things that need to be known in order to then advance the commercial component. And
Yes.
so I think we need to, it would be helpful to sort all this out, because otherwise I think, and tell the developers what we want from them.
And that's what we'll do when we release an RFP. We'll lay out exactly with more clarity what we want and how the site will be laid out and whatnot.
Bill, did you have a follow-up?
I did. US2 already owns the existing public facilities building in Union Square.
Kathy?
I think my understanding is they own the land.
Yes.
They
that's
don't own
my
the building.
When
Yeah.
did, and did the city get money for this?
I believe they did. I don't know. This happened before my time here, but that's my understanding.
Me
I don't
too,
know.
but yeah, I'll find out. I don't think, I was told that there is an expectation they're gonna pay for that building, but I don't know if that's true or not.
US2 is supposed to pay for the land and the building, I'm guessing. But as far as, I mean, I've been trying to follow this rather closely, and I didn't know that US2 already own the land. And I assume if they do, that means that they paid something for it.
Okay, well, again, I don't want to misspeak, but if they're leasing, if we're paying lease payments to them, then I would think that would be on the basis of owning land, or not just development rights, but I will certainly check that
because
out.
my understanding is that they are the designated developer for that
Yep.
parcel.
Okay,
But as far as I know, we haven't released it to them. But maybe I'm wrong. But I wish someone
well, that would make sense.
from the staff would get back to us and let us know this. And if
Do you
there
happen
was
to know?
an exchange of funds, what the amount of money was, and
Right.
when this happened.
Thank you. Excuse me, Ted, do you know the address?
Not off the top of my head, but I can find out.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get that for the next meeting. Christine?
Yeah, the other thing, in terms of how many RFPs are sent out, how many parties we invite to the dance, I would think vetting the current RFQ responses would be helpful in that regard. And I did read the RFQ, but I've sort of forgotten what it said. But there are certain things that I think we would want to understand
Yes.
about these three, respondents. Like, for instance, what's their financial wherewithal?
Yeah.
I don't know if those were the kinds of questions we asked in the RFQ.
We have extensive financial documentation, yes.
All right.
And Mr. Chair, to respond to Kathy's question, it's 220 Washington Street.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Any other questions of Ted on this matter? Okay, so we'll get those answers for the next meeting. If there, I think we'll go to the next item on the agenda is responses to the Winter Hill Urban Renewal Plan.
Yep, this is me, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to give responses to 3 questions that were posed during last month's meeting. So the first question that was posed was whether the SRA will need to approve the land development agreement with Mark Development for 299 Broadway. And so the answer to that is yes. I don't have more information on the timing of that process right now, but just wanted to confirm that yes, the SRA will need to approve the LDA. The second question that was asked was whether the fallout from the Silicon Valley Bank crisis has impacted the 299 Broadway project. This has not been impacted by that bank crisis, so just wanted to confirm that. So I know it's impacted other projects in the area. And then the third question that was asked is whether the credits for the project were federal or state level. And so I just wanted to give a clarification that the UCTIF, which is the Urban Center Housing Tax Increment Financing Program that the City Council approved for the 299 Broadway project, it allows the city to waive future local property taxes associated with the project, but it's not a tax credit program. The reason that DHCD was involved, so the reason that the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development was involved, just for others who are viewing this, is because they needed to approve the UCTIF plan, but it's not related to approving tax credits. So I just wanted to confirm that.
Okay, all right. Any
Are there any?
questions of Ben on Winter Hill? Bill?
Yeah, so would that mean that they don't have to pay any local property taxes in summer to the city?
So I can't speak like in so much detail about how exactly the UCTIF is set up. I can't say that they wouldn't have to pay any, but they're not paying the full amount of future property taxes. So the city is foregoing collecting certain local property taxes.
Right, I can add to that. The UCTIF itself does specify the value of the land only, without the improvements. And what the agreement is supposed to do is forgive the increase in value that occurs from the development. So it's not, so there's always going to be some taxes paid. There's a minimum amount that will be paid for the value of the land, but certain the increment, the increase in value based on the development after a certain point, they will not be paying taxes on it. It doesn't kick in until both buildings on the property are 92 or higher % occupied. And at that point, then they wouldn't have to pay the increment. So during the development process, they have to pay. They start with the land and the buildings as they're being built. It creates the incentive for them to get the project completed before their tax break kicks in.
Could we have some kind of a table showing what the tax payments would be by the developer for like the first 10 or 20 years so that we have some kind of idea?
Yep, there's something in there already in the plan, but we can certainly come up with something like that.
I would think the city council would want that.
Yeah, I think it was in the plan itself.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see that though.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Bill. Patrick?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, just a follow up to that. So, and I don't know, maybe we don't know the answer to this, but is that for a finite amount of time, that forgiveness?
Yes.
The notes from the last meeting said 20 years.
Right, it's 20 years,
Okay.
right.
Thanks. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions on the Winter Hill matter? So before we go to the next item, number 5, I'm going to entertain any questions from members of the public regarding Washington Street or Winter Hill. Ben, are there any members who wish to, any members of the public who wish to address the board with questions or comments at this time?
Not currently, but if you want to give a few seconds for hands.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, there are no hands, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So the next item in the agenda is an update regarding the status of virtual meetings. Who will be giving us that information? Ben, Ben Dennis, did you hear me?
This is
Yeah.
Kat.
This is me. Okay, I didn't know I was going to be speaking to this. I don't have the legislation in front of me, but it was the law was extended. I think Ben did what we read at the beginning of the meeting gave the correct site to the current statute.
So I believe what Phil referenced at the beginning was the old statute. So this
Oh.
was updated, but in the actual meeting notice and agenda that was posted. It's the updated statute. I just think
All
it
right,
has,
I knew I had given you the update. I haven't actually read the change. I was just told that we were good for the short term and plan to check that
Chapter
out.
2 of the Acts of 2023.
Right. I gave him the information, but I didn't read because it's a very long document and it wasn't highlighted where the actual text of that change was in there, but it did give a date, and I don't know what the date is offhand, but I can find out.
Okay, you mean an end date, Catherine?
Yes, I think there's an end date.
Okay, and so just for clarification, so that end date is a be all end all, or do individual boards have an opportunity to decide if they want to continue meeting remotely or virtually?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that we're planning for hybrid in the city.
Mhm.
We're moving in that direction, and but I don't know. I don't want to misspeak about what it says now.
Okay.
Patrick
Patrick, do you
has
have
something to say.
a question?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not 100%, but I believe the new legislation more or less extends the terms that were provided under the executive order and then followed by 2 extensions of the terms of the executive order. So, and I say that only because I'm dealing with managing virtual meetings next door for public bodies. But I guess I'd follow on with a question in terms of just logistically to the staff, but also to fellow members. What is the feeling about being able to get back together in person, in terms of people's comfort level and logistics and so on, because I do think there's a benefit to that when we can do it.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to read a summary of the of what Governor Healy signed into law? Would
Sure,
that be helpful?
sure.
Okay. On March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law a supplemental budget bill, which, among other things, extended the temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law to March 31st, 2025. Specifically, this further extension allows public bodies to continue holding meetings remotely without a quorum of the public body physically present at a meeting location and to provide adequate alternative access to remote meetings. The language does not make any substantive changes to the open meeting law other than extending the expiration date for the temporary provisions regarding remote meetings from March 31st, 2023 to March 31st, 2025.
Okay, Ted. Yes, Ben Ewen-Campen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the subject of members' feelings, my own feeling is for times when we have something like a public hearing on an incredibly consequential matter, I think there can be a value to having the option of in-person meetings in addition to fully remote ones. For general working meetings, I'm extremely in favor of remote meetings. I find they're really, really beneficial for many people who have reached out to me to be able to be engaged. Also for me personally, I think that there's an enormous benefit of continuing to meet virtually for regular meetings, but I'm certainly open to opportunities for us to have in-person meetings for particular reasons.
Yeah. Patrick?
Yes, and through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, I think the direction, well, what I would propose, the direction cities are going is not one or the other, it's hybrid. So individual members can decide to attend in person or remotely, as can members of the public, which arguably is the best of both worlds because some members of the public either don't have access or prefer to be in person, just as some find it more convenient to meet remotely. So, that's what I would, and we don't necessarily have to decide tonight, but I think that hybrid meeting arrangement allows for the most flexibility, both for the public as well as the bodies themselves.
I just, I'm going to chime in here a little bit. Just my experience with meetings in the past here in the city is particularly with the redevelopment authorities, that we were kind of being shuffled all over the city, and we never knew where we were going to be. And the public really, I mean, unless they really paid close attention to the public notices, didn't know either. Many of the places were too small to accommodate, the public. Many didn't have any parking spaces. Many didn't have any facilities for bicycling, for the handicapped, I could go on and on. I like the idea, of course, if there's something of import that, we think that it would behoove us to meet publicly. I think that would be, a good idea, not only for us, but for the public. But for the most part, I find this method of meeting to be very productive. But anyway, that's just one old person's comment on that. Patrick?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just add one more thing to be more explicit is digital equity is a real issue in our city, in our community. So while this is really convenient for many of us, it's not for everybody. So again, that's why I would make a case for hybrid. It allows access, equal access in person and online. But again, maybe it's just something for folks to think about. I don't know if that's something Somerville is currently doing, and it is more complicated to set up, so that's a factor as well. But again, in terms of the public, I think the best solution allows access both online and in person. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, just a final thought on that, and maybe it might be useful not only for this board, but all of the boards to know what is the general sense of the public. What would they, what are they preferring? Is there maybe a poll could be done to determine that? It would give us some guidance, perhaps, or maybe, some thoughts of doing it another way. But anyway, we don't have to, as you say, we don't have to make a decision tonight on that. Okay, if there's no other questions in that regard. So the next item on the agenda is items not reasonably anticipated by the chair. And the only, Ben, I was going to say, I don't know if you were going to follow up with this, but the only one I want to bring up is in the eventuality that the chair is not here for a meeting, how do we set up for a temporary chair or vice chair? How would the board like to do that? I'll throw that out there.
That wasn't what I was going to discuss, but I believe what we had spoken about as staff recently as some options was that in the future, you could elect a vice chair. The SRA could elect a vice chair who could step in. I think until that time, we could also just have a policy saying that if the chair is unable to attend or is sick, that the rest of the members could vote that day on who could step in as chair. But obviously curious to hear board members' thoughts.
Okay, I have no preference either way. Any other members want to weigh in? I mean, it might make more sense to let the members decide at that night, because the vice chair could conceivably not be in attendance either for some reason. So it would maybe make more sense that the members could elect a temporary chair for that meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Ben, is any other issues not anticipated by the chair you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that at the December meeting, when discussing snow storage in 90 Washington, the Commissioner of the Department of Public Works promised that they would return before July to present on snow operations at the site. So they're going to do so.
Were there any?
Yeah, not that I've heard about, but they're going to come and present on that next month. So just wanted to give that heads up.
Okay. If there's no other items, the next meeting of the board is scheduled for May 17th, 5:30. And I'll entertain motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Alana Bonnie makes a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Patrick McCormick seconds. All those in favor, roll call vote. Alana Bonnie,
Yes.
anyone Campin,
Yes.
William Gage,
Yes.
Patrick McCormick,
Yes.
Christine Stone
Left.
has left, and Phil Urkelini, we have voted to adjourn. All right, everybody, we'll see you next month in May.
All right,
Thank you. Have a good
I
night.
will get rid of this old,
Script.
okay. We're just gonna read right from the minutes, Catherine, from now on.
Okay,
All right. Okay, everybody,
Thanks.
see you later.
take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.